Hello, everyone. This is Elle, and you're listening to Elle Speaks. I wanted to talk about the South Carolina Attorney General's Office rebuttal motion to Alec Murdaugh's motion to suspend his appeal and to remand his case back to the trial court so that Alec Murdaugh may ask for a new trial. Alec Murdaugh wants to suspend his appeal and ask the trial court for a new trial based on newly discovered evidence. And if you've been following this case, then you know that Alec Murdaugh has made an allegation that his jury was tainted. So, a little background. March 2023, Alec Murdaugh was sentenced to life for the double murder of his wife Maggie and his son Paul. September 5th, 2023, the defense put in a motion, like I stated, to suspend Alec Murdaugh's appeal so that the case can be remanded back to trial court. What I find interesting is the state of South Carolina Attorney General's office, who responded with a rebuttal motion to Alec Murdaugh's motion. Now, the Attorney General's office states a procedural defect in Alec Murdaugh's motion to suspend his appeal and to remand his case back to trial court. And a procedural defect, especially at the appellate stage, can send a legal team back to the beginning. And the Attorney General's office states that along with Alec Murdaugh's motion, there should also be an affidavit from Alec Murdaugh stating that he did not know of the evidence that he now claims is newly discovered before the jury reached its verdict, and that he could not have found this evidence through due diligence before the jury reached its verdict. Even though a procedural argument like the one that the state makes and the one that the state is asking that Alec Murdaugh, that his motion be dismissed because of the omission of this affidavit. The state attorney general's office, Alan Wilson, the attorney general, states that this affidavit is essential. Even though that's a strong argument, Alan Wilson also includes in his motion that Alec Murdaugh's accusation of jury tampering is not very specific, that it is indefinite, that the state cannot discern when the defense discovered the alleged jury tampering. And the state attorney general's office, quotes 3 different interviews given by members of Alec's legal team. One of those interviews was September 6th, the day after Alec's motion was filed for a new trial. And another interview was by Harpootlian, where he and another member of Alec Murdaugh's team talked about the discovery of the alleged jury tampering. Now, Harpootlian states in an interview that they knew, Harpootlian thinks, quote, "I think we saw it happening," end quote. That to me suggests that Harpootlian is saying the defense saw the jury tampering happening in real time. And then September 6th, the day after the Alec Murdaugh's team filed his motion for a new trial, there's an interview with one of the legal team on Good Morning America, and he states pretty soon after. Now, before in the same interview with Harpootlian, a member of the legal team states immediately after. Why does it matter? Why does it matter? It matters because when the defense supposedly learned of allegations of jury tampering, it is supposed to immediately, as soon as it learns of it or as soon as it suspects jury tampering, it should have immediately notified the trial court. Now, what I find interesting is a constitutional violation. For instance, a defendant's right to a fair and impartial jury. That is a constitutional right. Violating a constitutional right is the strongest argument for a new trial. Newly discovered evidence has to be compelling. Like I stated before, one, the evidence could not have been known about during the trial and the defense has to prove that it could not have discovered it through due diligence. It's a higher bar than a lot of people may realize. It's a really high bar. And the highest bar is that this newly discovered evidence would likely render a different verdict than the first jury gave. I'm curious to know what this newly discovered evidence is that the defense believes is so compelling that a new jury would likely render a different verdict than the guilty verdict that Alec Murdaugh received in March of this year. And I'm also curious as to why the motion for a new trial was filed, in my opinion, prematurely, because as the Attorney General states, SLED is still investigating the accusations of jury tampering. And Alec Murdaugh's strongest argument would be a constitutional violation. So I'm really curious as to why the defense submitted the motion so quickly. Because unless Alec Murdaugh is physically ill, well, a life sentence, he has nothing but time on his hands. So I'm curious and I'd like to hear from the listeners. Do you all have any idea what this newly discovered evidence is? And do you think it's compelling enough for a new jury to render a different verdict, like not guilty? And what do you think about the jury tampering, the allegation of jury tampering? The clerk of courts writing a book detailing how that clerk spoke to jurors during that trial is disturbing. It's disturbing because that could throw everyone involved back to the beginning. And in this case, the defendant's family and the victim's family are one and the same. And even though the family is one and the same, the victim and the defendant's family, the emotional turmoil of a new trial is daunting to me. Do you think that Alec Murdaugh has a chance for a new trial? Do you think that the clerk of courts violated Alec Murdaugh's right to a fair and impartial jury? And last but not least, do you think that whatever this newly discovered evidence is, that it is compelling enough that Judge Newman will order a new trial? Because it is likely that a jury, upon hearing this newly discovered evidence, would render a different verdict. So this has been a video about Alec Murdaugh and the appellate process that he is now trying to suspend.